Hi, friends. Today I got to sit down with a wonderful woman. She's a mother, she's a teacher, she's an author, and we talk about things to do with motherhood. We talk about praying for our kids. We even talk about the difficulties of trying to conceive and the challenges of wanting children and not having children, and even just being able to see the importance of prayer even if we're not mothers. It's such a great episode. I think you'll be highly encouraged. And so please listen and watch, and you'll be blessed. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of BU Project, where we talk about a range of topics from leadership, starting your own business, resilience, clean living, just to name a few for the everyday woman of faith. Today on the show, we have a very special guest. She is a mother, a teacher, and now the author of Motherhood Moments, Finding the Words to Pray for Your Children. Welcome to the show, Desi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have you and talk about your book and learn more about you. But before we jump into some questions, I actually would love to know, so you had mentioned you're an avid book lover. Do you have a favourite book or a favourite genre?
Yes, so I love reading, much to my husband's demise, because I purchased too many books that I actually don't eventually read. Um,
Love it.
but I guess that's what every book lover says. Do I have a favorite book? Probably not. I kind of, over the years, my genres kind of changed in direction. So I used to love those romance novels when I was younger. Then I got into a bit of crime and thriller. I'm not a sci-fi person by any means. So no, don't give me a sci-fi book. But I do love those mystery or something that's around the corner that you didn't expect to happen type books. So I don't know what type of genre that is, but that's kind of what I enjoy at the moment. But a particular book, probably I would say I'd stick with the classics actually. Maybe Frankenstein, and maybe I'll just stick with Frankenstein. Yeah, that's probably.
Wow, I've never read Frankenstein. Might have to add that to the list.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. The fact that I just said that I'm not a sci-fi person, everybody's going to be like, that's a bit strange. But I think I studied it when I was in high school, and I just love the analysis of it when you can discuss like the Christian elements, like we're created for a purpose, yet this monster doesn't have a purpose. So I think I love the theology behind it, not necessarily that it's sci-fi.
Yes. Okay, that makes complete sense. And I have to say, growing up, my mum used to get all of the Christian romance books from the Christian bookstore, and I would read them. And I love romantic books. I'm very cheesy. So I love them too. But I also love crime as well because I find it so interesting. Just how people's minds think and I guess what leads them to do crime and then how they're found. It's really interesting. So
as a parent though now I just can't do it when it's got things to do with children. I just cannot. Can't read anything or watch anything in that field. Anyway, it's all good.
So much sense. Yeah, that would be really challenging. And speaking of you being a parent, I also want to know, as a family, do you have a favorite activity that you like to do together?
Yeah, so we love camping. We try to go once a month. We have our own camper trailer. And so my husband and I enjoyed it before we had kids. But of course, going away is really expensive. And, we just can't do that as often. So camping is a really good alternative to seeing a bit of the country, being outdoors, spending time with each other. And of course, a lot of the time at campsites, they don't have, coverage and all that sort of stuff. So you're really, in each other's faces for a weekend. So yeah, it's great. It's great quality time. And it's great just to be outdoors and get some fresh air. The kids love it. They love being outside,
Yeah.
even at home. So it's hard to get them back in the house. So that's just like right up their alley. And they love, sleeping together. And it's like a one big sleepover. So at the moment, because they're very little, they really enjoy it. We'll see how that goes as they get a bit older. But at the moment, that's what we love to do as a family. So yeah.
That's wonderful. And do you go back to the same place or do you try different locations?
It depends because we go so often and usually over a weekend. We want to try find local places, or not too local, but like maybe an hour or two away. So we found a couple of places that we love. So if, last minute we decide to go, we can go there. But we do like trying different places, and especially on long weekends, we can go and venture out a bit longer drives, like 4 or 5 hours away. But yeah, if you're going only for a couple of days, you probably want to stay a little bit closer to home.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely love that. I don't have kids yet, but I love the idea of kids being out in nature and just, I guess, being away from screens all the time and just exploring. Because I think there's so much beauty in nature, and I think like I feel like I find God so much in nature. So I love that you guys do it monthly. Like that's really great.
We try. We're not always great at it. And obviously come winter time, like the weather's not great. So it's weather dependent as well. But we do, if it's not camping, then we'll book an Airbnb and just, go away for the weekend. But yeah, you're right. It's so nice being outside and just getting fresh air, having a clear mind, not being stuck in the house all day, all
Yeah,
weekend. So
yeah.
yeah, it's good.
That's so wonderful. Desi, I do want to unpack um, your book, and I want to kind of talk about how did you come to writing a book, and talk about how did you land on the topic for your book. And so I'd love for you to take us on the journey. How did you decide you wanted to write a book, and how did you land on the topic?
Well, it seems like a very long time ago now, so it's hard to like go back and remember. But I didn't start with the intention to write a book. It was never sort of something that was on my mind while I was writing that this was going to be anything at the end of this. But I was completing my master's at the time. And so a lot of my master's was in Christian education, well, Christian teaching education. So at the National Institute for Christian Education. So it was kind of teaching based and Christian based, which is why I chose to study my master's, which I never in my wildest dreams thought I would. So doing my master's, a lot of the conversations were about children or about the relationship that parents have with their kids, how Christian schooling and that impact in bringing up kids and all that sort of stuff. So I guess like through my readings and my research in my master's, we had to do like journals every week. And so I'd be writing things down. And at the time I wasn't a mum. So I was just kind of like writing things down for my own, thought process. And then I became a mum and then COVID hit. So COVID kind of put a spanner in the works, and I had my maternity leave at home. But it was nice because my husband was home as well.
Yeah.
But again, I was a new mum. Obviously, community wasn't available to me at the time,
Yeah.
being everything was in lockdown. So again, I was just like dealing with all of this, with all these thoughts and emotions. And the only way I knew how to process it all was by writing. So I'd be like writing things on my laptop or like on bits of papers and in my journal. And then eventually kind of decided, I don't know, I'll type it all out and just see what happens. So I did, I typed it all out. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't have any intention that it would be a book, and nor did I think that it would be a book about praying. I just kind of was writing. And it's weird when I explain this to people, I kind of say that it wasn't hard because I feel like God really led that, and God really put the words on my heart and my mind to write. So it didn't feel like it was unnatural. It kind of felt very, very natural in my writing. So anyway, I started writing, and then I thought, this looks interesting. And I was speaking to one of my mentors for my master's, And I showed him snippets of it, and he was like, this is really good. This could be a novel, or not a novel, but a book. And so I passed it on to a friend, a trusted friend, and she sort of said the same thing. So we made it a bit more structured. I had I guess by that stage, I had a very clear purpose as to who I wanted it for and who I wanted my publishers to be. And I did want Christian publishers. Finding a Christian publisher that then helped me piece it all together and make it into the book/devotion that it is, was really helpful. So yeah, like I said, it never really started out as a book. It was more just like my ideas and thoughts and all that. But over time kind of developed into that.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Desi. I'd love to kind of unpack praying over our kids and finding the words to pray from, and particularly now as the world we live in is quite, I don't know if chaotic is the right word, but there's a lot happening in our world and there's a lot impacting our children. Why do you think it's important to pray, or at least find the words to pray over our kids?
Well, I remember a few years back, so I work at a Christian school, and I remember a few years back, one of my coordinators said something along the lines of, we might be the only people praying for the students in our classroom. And that really kind of hit me. It's just something that I've always had at the back of my mind. And especially because, like, you think at a Christian school, not every child that comes in comes from a Christian family. So that's like really impactful when you think of it in that way. So I guess when I had my daughter, that kind of stuck with me, and I kept thinking, well, I am a Christian parent, and the bare minimum I can do is to pray for my kid. Of course, then I have to clothe her and feed her and do all these other things. But the bare minimum I can do as a Christian mum is pray. And I might be the only person in her life that prays for her. Now, I know that I'm not, but I might be. So I guess, I think your question was, why is it important to pray for our kids? And I think, my child, just because she comes from a Christian family, or my son comes from a Christian family, they're not immune to suffering, or they're not immune to hardships or temptations, or the things that we're all experiencing in our lives. And so no matter how much as a parent I want to try and avoid that, I just can't. I can do the best that I can, but I can't avoid that in their life. That will come. So I'm aware that I'm also teaching her. Like, she's watching me. They're watching me. And they're watching my husband, and they're watching our friends and our family. So I'm very aware of what they're receiving from the world around them. I also am aware of the fact that they have gifts and talents from God. And I truly believe that primarily they are His children, and they are gifted to us as parents to care for them and look after them in this world until they return back to Him. Praying, I guess, for them at this moment when they are very little, especially when it comes to like the words that I express in my book, we may not see the fruition of those prayers until they're adults. Praying for them now is actually helpful more for me than it is for them, because I'm seeing them in the way that God wants me to see them and the way that He sees them. And I pretty much pray that prayer every day, is like, God, please help me to see my kids the way that you see them. Because in my own vision, I'll see the best and the worst to every extreme, but He sees them perfectly and He knows them perfectly. So why wouldn't I then ask Him to help me in parenting the little people that He made that will one day become big people? So yes, I guess that's why I think it's important. But yeah.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful answer. And I think prayer is so powerful. And like you said, sometimes we don't see the outworkings of our prayer straight away. Sometimes we may never see it. But would you say that there's been a shift since you've started being intentional and you've written your book? Has there been a shift in your family or your kids, or even just areas you've prayed over? Have you seen any changes?
That's a hard question. So my husband and I have been praying for our kids before they were even born. The desire to have children, we've had that desire for a very long time. And, we struggled to conceive for a long time. So I guess like all of that has just forced us into prayer mode for a very long time. But has it really changed? I think, again, I kind of go back to that. I haven't seen it so much in my kids, or maybe I have now that my kids are getting a little bit older. Like I'm seeing things develop in their life. But praying for them now, like I said, is more helpful for me. And I've seen my heart change, and I've seen myself become a little bit more controlled, have a lot more wisdom in the way that I deal with things. And yeah, it's opened my eyes to help me be more aware as to who they are and who God wants them to be. So yeah, have I seen changes in them? Maybe. Like, I mean, they're only 2 and 4, so they're very, very little still.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, as my daughter, she's 4 going on 5 this year, as she's getting older, we are seeing like little changes in her life and the way that she's developing and growing. But yeah, so I think as well, if we're open to what we want for our children, and our family and friends kind of rally alongside us, and that's helpful as well. But yeah, in terms of prayer, I think it's more helpful for us at the moment than it is for anyone else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a really helpful reflection to have. And if it's okay, I just want to touch on what you mentioned about struggling to conceive. And if I'm honest, that's an area that my husband and I are struggling with at the moment. I've put this on Instagram so people know, but it's been over a year since we've started trying, and I am a little bit older in age. So there's a lot of factors that's coming into us not falling pregnant just yet. But I know it's a struggle for so many women. I've spoken to so many women and I've seen so many women. Is there any advice or encouragement you would give to a couple that are trying and maybe it's not happening straight away?
Oh, this is huge. It's heavy, and I guess I feel kind of inadequate now to give advice because I've kind of come on the other side of it. But I do know how hard it is, and I do know how much of a struggle it is emotionally, not only just physically, because of course you're going through all the emotions, but emotionally and mentally to have to go through and carry that. It's huge. And we did struggle before we even started having kids. I've had multiple miscarriages after having my son and my daughter. you know every miscarriage I would turn around and go, I'm still not out of this. I feel like I was done. Had our 2 kids and I feel like I should be done now, but no, God continuously gives us this next portion of our life that we have to deal with. And so, do I have advice? I don't know, because everybody deals with this differently.
Yeah.
But what I have learned is that when the closer we are to God, He helps us through it. And I don't pretend to say that this journey is easy, because it's not. It's very, very tricky. And a lot of people don't understand the emotions behind it all. And I think it's really important to value your marriage at this point in your life, and in this season that you're in. I think it's very important to take time out to be together and to continuously grow in love with each other, because that can kind of get lost in the way, because you get so focused in having a kid. And then in saying that, it's amazing, no matter how many hardships I've faced in this struggling to conceive wave, that God has always brought peace in the situation. I didn't know if I was ever going to have children. Actually, we were given a 3% chance to ever conceive naturally, and all my children have been conceived naturally. And so God works in ways that we can't comprehend. Our waiting is not in vain. And sometimes we won't see, like I've said before, we won't see the fruition of our prayers, maybe not even in this life. And we don't know God's bigger purpose and plan. But seek God first. He'll provide the peace that's needed.
Yeah.
And then also just remember to still be in love with each other as a husband and wife, because that is first and foremost, you are still a family as husband and wife. A child does not make you a family. You're a family as a husband and wife, and that is just as important as having kids. So, yeah.
It's such a great answer, and I appreciate how honest you are about answering the question, because it's not an easy question to answer. And that just made me think about how fixated I became on trying to have a baby. And it's almost like that was my focus, not my husband. And especially because we haven't been married very long. And it's amazing how that, not that it became an obsession, but every month that was all I focused on. And
I understand.
and it's so easy to, because we're so aware of our bodies and we're so aware of the time of the month. And I feel like God was just saying to me, look, you've, the prayer of finding a husband has been answered. Like, I've answered your prayer. This is the time to enjoy that and get to know him and get to do fun things together and all that kind of stuff, and not waste this time. I think sometimes when we want something so much, we can waste it because we're so focused on that thing that we forget what we have around us. So I've had to come to that place now, and it's still hard, but I've had to come to the place where I'm actually really thankful I have a husband and God answered my prayer, and my desire is to be a mother, but at the same time, God's plan and purpose for me is so much more important. And if I believe I'll be a mother, but it's his timing, and I think that's what I'm holding on to, just God's goodness and faithfulness, and just releasing it back to him every month. So
Yeah.
it was hard to get there.
Yeah, and especially at the start when you're consistently seeing, a negative test, a negative test, a
Yeah.
negative test, and then you're like, my goodness, what else can I do?
Yeah.
This is crazy. And you get so fixated on it. But yeah, I think we do. I think you're right. We kind of lose sight of what God has blessed us with already, and what He's answered already. We always want the next best thing or the next thing. We want to keep going on and on and on. But, you're right. God has given us so much. So let us enjoy what he has given us. And the next thing will be added to us when the time's right. But yeah, and I hate to kind of say God will give you a child, because there's sometimes God doesn't, and we don't know why. And so, but we have to just sit in the fact that God knows best, and he will provide and he will make a way. And you know what? He will bring peace if that's not the case, and he will help us through that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think too, as women listen to this, I think it's important to still go through the emotions as well, because we're human, and I think having trusted friends that can support and pray for you during those tough seasons is really important, to not feel like you have to go through it alone. And I think too, just holding on to God's promises. So I've been holding on to 1 Samuel, where Hannah has said, I prayed for this child and God answered. So that's just something between me and God. So I'm holding on to that scripture. But at the same time, I know God's faithful. And so I just want anyone that's listening to this, just be encouraged in the sense that maybe God hasn't answered your prayer for whatever, maybe to have a baby or maybe to find a spouse. But I believe that God is faithful at the end of the day. And I think that's what you've got to hold on to, God's faithfulness. So, Desi, thank you for sharing that. Like, that's not an easy thing to talk about. But I think it's going to help women who are listening.
I'm glad.
Such a tough topic to kind of move on from. It's so heavy, and I'm sure we could unpack it further, but I do just want to touch on, you're also a teacher. And one of the things you had mentioned in your bio is that you're really passionate about training and raising up the next generation of Jesus followers. I'd love to unpack that more. And I imagine that you mean that not just for your kids, but also the children that you teach and that are in your life. What do you think that looks like? Like, how do we raise up the next generation of Jesus followers?
It's tricky because I think being a teacher and a parent are very different roles. And especially, I'm a high school teacher, so they come to me, and generally senior high school. So they come to me in their late teens. And so by then, a lot of, they're ready to face the world by this stage. And so, yeah, so being a parent of little ones, but then having teaching later teens is very different. As a parent at the moment, so I think, let me backtrack a little bit maybe and just say, I think it's very important that a lot of the training and the discipline comes from a very young age and from parents. I think parents play a vital role in that. So as a teacher, I can partner with the parent to have the best success for the child that's in my classroom. And whether that be in wisdom, in respect, in what they want to do for the rest of their lives. So there's that part. But I mean, I only have them for a year and then they move on into the big wide world. So my time with them is very limited. But as a parent, I'm with them their whole life. I would hope so. So yeah, so I think it's very different as a teacher, and then again very different as a parent. As a parent, then I'm thinking, well, my goal, so our goal as parents, and we've put this as like our mission statement, is to raise children who have a passion for God and love people on purpose. So that's our mission statement as a family. And so with that in mind, we want to make sure that our training from early years up until teenagehood, they can then confidently leave our home having developed a heart of maturity, having a heart that chooses Christ above everything, chooses a good spouse that learns to listen to God's Spirit, somebody who is able to use money wisely, somebody who's able to lead their own family well. So that's what we want them to be as adults. So I want to do everything in my power now to train them up for that, because they can't just wake up one morning as a young adult and go, all of a sudden I have all this wisdom, woohoo. It kind of happens from a young age. In the early years, we're looking at, having a heart of obedience and self-control, listening to us as parents, which eventually will then lead to listening to God, developing a heart of wisdom, or like when to speak, when to act, treating people with understanding, and having a good understanding of how God even treats others, and who God is, having good work ethic, having a heart of godliness, choosing the right friends, working well, working hard, how to deal with temptation, whether that even be like our own desires. We want a toy that, my daughter's always wanting different toys. We go shopping, but no, we can't. We need to be wise with the way that we spend our money, or, we can't always just have the next best thing. So like even participating in church and community. So all those things play a role from a young age. And it may not look that way as a 4-year-old. It might just be, being able to control your emotions as a 4-year-old and learning how to do that well. But then at a 14-year-old, that looks very different. And then at a 24-year-old, that looks very different. So I guess like the training starts from young is what I'm trying to say. And then eventually when they come to me in year 12 as a teacher, I'm hoping that they can leave high school with this wisdom in some form. I obviously haven't had them from childhood. I've only got them for a year. So in this year, how can I prepare them best for the outside world? How can I speak into their life where they know how to love people well, or can they discern God's voice in their life? Now, I have to say, not all of my children in my classroom are Christians, and nor do they come from Christian families. So that's very hard when I have that mindset, but they may not. But I have an opportunity to speak that into their life in that 1 year that I get. So yeah, different, but kind of similar.
Yes, such a great answer. And I just want to say, I love that your family has a mission statement. That's awesome. How did you land on that?
We did a parenting course when I was pregnant. I don't actually remember if I was pregnant or not. Maybe my daughter was very young. But we did a parenting course, and it was actually called something about fatherhood. So it wasn't actually about me. It was about fatherhood.
Yeah.
And they basically spoke about how fatherhood plays a huge role in the family, and the importance of fatherhood, especially because at the moment, the role of a father seems obsolete in our community and in our culture at the moment. So we kind of actually, I think I was pregnant. Anyway, beside the point. So we did this course, and my husband and I, and part of it was to come up with a mission and vision for our family, because they took the approach that as a family, we are a team on mission, and every family is a team, and every team has a different mission given by God. So with that in mind, that's sort of like we spent some time praying and thinking about, okay, what do we want for our family and what do we want for our children? And when they leave our home, what do we want to see in them, as young adults? Because like I said, they don't just wake up one day and go, oh yeah, I know everything. It's, it comes in increments. They learn things as they go. So it's really good because like having a mission means that like we try to be
Yeah.
very, I don't know what the word is now, it's escaped me, but yeah, like we know where we're heading. So
Yeah.
that's our aim.
I love that. And would you encourage other families or couples to have a mission statement as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes time. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time, but I think when you're as a couple, if you're on the same page, and that's really helpful in raising kids, you know that your goal is the same. In terms of even discipline, your discipline has the same purpose. Not disciplining just because you're annoyed with a particular, attitude or whatever it is. It has a purpose. The way that you speak to your kids has a purpose. The outings that you do in your life, our camping trips, they have a purpose. We don't just, like I said before, we go camping because we want to be with each other. But the fact that we're in nature together, we're creating memories together, we're able to, form connections with one another. And as a family unit, you become stronger in that way. You spend more time with each other. So yeah, just like those little bits, camping may not be for you and your family, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. But what God-given abilities and gifts are in your family team that work well for your family, because every family is different.
Yeah. I actually think I've never heard having a mission statement for your family, so I've got to look into that.
Yeah, do it.
Talk to my husband about it. But I am thinking about the mother who might be a little bit tired and probably like finding it really hard to even think about like a mission statement or think about putting breakfast on the table because they're exhausted and all that kind of stuff. Um, I don't know. Do you have anything to speak to that woman who's maybe feeling a little bit tired as a mother and a bit overwhelmed? Like how do you do it as a mother? Like what have you learned, I guess?
Um, the best advice I received as a new mum was that life happens in seasons, and to give yourself grace in every season that you're in.
Mhm.
And gee, that lifted a huge burden off my shoulders. But in the season that I'm in right now is very, very hard. I've got 2 little ones. I'm expecting my third at the end of this year. I've had a really rough few months, not just pregnancy sickness, but I had a miscarriage last year as well. So, add work to that, add, family pressures, friendship stuff. Life's just crazy. And like you said before, life is chaotic. And I know that my season will change. I know that next year for me looks very different to what this year looks like. And if I'm completely honest, reading and prayer at the moment in my life is like, good luck trying to find time. And I'm sure there's like a lot of women and men out there, but a lot of women especially are carrying a very heavy mental load. And especially if you're a mum, there's just so many tabs open in your brain constantly, and so many people and things that need your attention. But give yourself grace in the season that you're in. And it's okay if your reading and your prayer time is while your kids are having breakfast, or it is just the kids' Bible on the table while you're, reading to your kids, or it's the praying with your kids. The quiet time may never come in this season, and that's okay. God knows, and God has gifted you this season for a purpose. Don't think that just those little things aren't important, because they are. And you know what? I've had to cling on to that in the last year, is that my reading time is actually me just reading my kids' Bible to my kids. And you know what? How much I actually get out of those things. Sometimes they explain things in such detail that I'm like, oh my goodness, I never knew that story was about that before. So, you learn so much. I think God can speak to us even in the smallest ways. So don't doubt that those things are not important, because they really are. And sometimes when I'm praying, for breakfast with the kids, I'm actually adding my own little prayer points in there too, because that's my prayer for the morning. So don't doubt those little moments that you get. And you know what? Our kids then see how valuable God is in our life, just because they're being immersed in that with you. But then seasons will change, and I know my kids will get older and they'll probably won't want to talk to me. No, I don't know. That's extreme. But I might have more quiet time up my sleeve as they get older, and and then I'll be able to do that much better than what I do now. So yeah, give yourself grace in the season that you're in.
I like that. And so, if anything, that women who are feeling a little bit tired or overwhelmed, or just kind of like, this is hard, you've just been given permission by Desi to give yourself grace for the season you are in. So there you go.
Yes, permission by me, because I give all the permission.
But it's interesting. My sister, so my older sister, has 3 kids, and 7, 5, and 4. So probably around similar ages of what your kids will be. And obviously I'm learning a lot through her, because she's a mum, I'm not yet a mum. I can't remember what the exact topic was, but she read something, and it was like, give yourself permission, or like I give you permission. And she's like, I just felt so released by that, by someone just saying you have permission to do this or do that. And I think sometimes we feel like we need permission, but really we don't. But sometimes just hearing it, kind of, we're like, oh yes, I can give myself grace. Like, that's exactly what I should do. Anyway, side note, that was just something that reminded me of that.
Yeah, I think we're too hard on ourselves sometimes. Like, I think a lot of the time we expect that we have to do everything, especially when it comes to like our Christian life. That, God expects me to get up at 5 a.m. and read and pray at 5 a.m. before my whole house wakes up. You know what? I'm not a morning person. It's not going to happen. No matter how many times I put my alarm on to get up at 5, it won't happen. I'm sorry. I can't. And so, that's okay. God didn't make me a morning person. That's fine. We move on. But there are other bits in our day that we can give to God.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So give yourself grace. And I would also add, don't compare yourself as well to the other mum or woman. I think social media can sometimes be really hard, like in terms of comparing ourselves to other women and thinking we have to be like them, but we don't. We can be inspired, but we don't have to be like them. So I just want to call that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
So good. So, Desi, we're going to link where people can buy your book. So, can you just tell us, if someone is interested in buying, and I highly recommend them to, where can they find your book?
Okay, so my book is available in a lot of places. But in Australia, I'm pretty sure you can grab it off Amazon is the first place. So if you just type in either my name or the title, it'll come up. It's also available at Koorong, Barnes & Noble, but I don't know if Barnes & Noble actually ship around Australia. I'm not sure about that. I think that's more of like a US thing. But if you follow me on Instagram, you can send me a link, send me a message, and you can purchase it directly from me as well. And that will be a signed copy from me. But if you purchase it from Amazon or elsewhere, then it does not come from me directly. So Yes.
It
So
won't
there's
be
a few
signed.
places.
Yes.
Sorry, what was that?
It won't be a signed copy if we purchase it from somewhere else.
But
Okay.
you can purchase it from me directly, yes.
Okay. And Desi, what is your Instagram handle?
So it's just at DSSOITS.
Okay.
So very interesting. It's just my initials for my name. DSSOITS.
Okay. Love it. And I will link it so that everybody has access to it. Desi, thank you so much for joining the show today. It's been so wonderful to have a conversation with you. I'm going to encourage people to buy your book. I might buy a few copies as well to give to people. Do you have any final thoughts or comments that you wanted to share?
Not really, but I think just one thing, and it just kind of, given our conversation earlier about, women who may be listening who aren't parents or mothers yet, I think my encouragement to you is, especially given in light of my book, don't feel like your prayers are invalid. They are valid, and your prayers for the next generation are really important, just as much as my prayers as a mother are important. You may obviously not be praying for your own children, but you're praying for the children in your communities and in your family and in the people that you know. And you can also be praying for the mothers who are having those very heavy mental loads, women that are struggling to actually even come to the feet of Jesus in this season that they're in. So please, my encouragement then is just for those women, it's just like, don't feel like you're invalid because you're not a mum. You're very valid and you're very important for God's work. So yeah, I know that we've spoken a lot about motherhood and all that, but I feel like that's really something that women who may be going through a lot at the moment may feel like, God's neglected them because they haven't blessed them with children. But that's not the case. You're very important in God's kingdom and in God's work that He's doing. So, yeah.
Thanks, Desi. That's a beautiful way to end the show. And again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And thank you so much to everyone else for watching and listening. As I said before, I will put in links to Desi's book, and I'll put in a link so you can find Desi, and if you want to have a chat with her or buy a book directly from her. But we hope you found today encouraging. Please subscribe to the channel, and we will see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.